The screech of tires was the last thing Lin Feng heard. It was a violent metallic scream that cut through the mundane quiet of his walk home. Then came the impact.
A bone-shattering force that tossed him like a rag doll into the cold asphalt. For a few flickering seconds, he saw the stars, then the headlights of the truck, and then nothingness.
A heavy, suffocating silence followed. It felt like being submerged in thick, warm ink. Lin Feng tried to gasp for air, but he had no lungs. He tried to reach out, but he had no arms. Suddenly, a crisp mechanical chime echoed in the void of his mind. System initializing. Soul integration, 100%. Host species, spirit sapling, rank 1. Current status, fragile/developing. Location, great desolate forest, outskirts, a tree. I'm a tree. Lin Feng's thoughts raced. He didn't see in the traditional sense. Instead, he felt the damp, nutrient-rich soil pressing against his skin, which was actually coarse bark. He felt the subterranean rivers of water miles below, and above him the searing, life-giving heat of the sun. He was a small emerald green sprout, barely 2 feet tall, standing in a clearing surrounded by ancient towering oaks that looked like wooden skyscrapers. But there was something else, a hum in the air. A shimmering invisible current that he could drink in through his leaves. Notice spiritual chi detected. Passive absorption started. Experience points. XP +1+1+1. Lin Feng realized he wasn't just any tree, he was a spirit tree. In this music world, power wasn't just for humans, it was for everything that could breathe the essence of the heavens. The tranquility didn't last. The ground began to vibrate. A low, guttural grunt reached his sensory perimeter. From the thicket emerged an iron-toothed boar. It was the size of a small car covered in coarse, needle-like fur with tusks that gleamed like polished scimitars. The beast stopped, its wet snout twitching. It smelled the concentrated chai emanating from Lin Feng. To a beast, a spirit sapling wasn't just a plant. It was a pill of pure energy that could trigger an evolution. The boar pawed at the earth, its red eyes locked onto Lin Feng's fragile stem. Oh, no you don't, Lin Feng thought. A surge of adrenaline hitting his sap. I didn't die just to become pig fodder. Warning, hostile entity detected, scanning. Iron-Tawed boar, level 3 wild beast, emergency protocol. Skill entangling roots, level 1 unlocked. The boar charged. It was a blur of gray muscle and killing intent. Lin Feng didn't panic. He reached music deep into his consciousness, grasping the threads of chai he had just absorbed and shoving them music down into his root system. He commanded them to grow, to harden, to strike, crack. The earth burst open just as the boar reached the center of the clearing. 3 thick whip-like roots, dark as obsidian and tipped with sharp thorns, shot upward. They wrapped around the boar's front legs with the speed of a closing trap. The beast squealed in shock, its momentum carrying it forward. It flipped over, crashing into the dirt inches away from Lin Feng's trunk. The boar struggled, its massive muscles bulging as it tried to tear the roots apart. Lin Feng felt the strain. It felt like his own limbs were being pulled from their sockets. He needed more power. Drink! Lin Feng roared in his mind. The thorns on the roots elongated, piercing the boar's thick hide. Lin Feng felt a rush of warmth. Not the gentle warmth of the sun, but the hot metallic taste of life force. He was draining the boar, absorbing essence. XP +50 +100 +150. Level up, level up. The boar's struggles grew weaker. Its once vibrant eyes dimmed until they were nothing but glassy stones. The massive body shriveled as Lin Feng sucked every drop of spiritual marrow from its bones. As the beast breathed its last, a wave of energy exploded through Lin Feng's wooden frame. His trunk expanded, his bark thickened into armored plates, and his leaves turned a deep, lustrous jade. Species evolution available. Current form, spirit sapling, rank 3. New skill unlocked, spirit aura, level 1. New skill unlocked, rapid growth level 1. Lin Feng looked at the withered husk of the boar. He felt a strange sense of satisfaction. In his past life, he was a victim of circumstance, a man crushed by a machine he couldn't control. Here he was the machine, he was the environment. He looked at the surrounding forest. The birds were silent and the smaller animals had fled. They felt it, the birth of something predatory, something ancient. He wasn't just going to grow, he was going to dominate. Days bled into weeks. Though for Lin Feng, time had a different meaning now. He didn't measure it by the ticking of a clock, but by the slow rhythmic pulse of the earth and the steady rise and fall of the sun. Each sunrise brought a fresh torrent of golden chi, which he drank music greedily, his jade-cold leaves shivering with delight. Thanks to the rapid growth skill, Lin Feng was no longer a mere sapling. He stood nearly 15 feet tall now, his trunk wide enough that a man couldn't wrap his arms around it. His bark had darkened into a deep obsidian-like charcoal, etched with faint glowing silver veins that pulsed like a heartbeat. Status update, host Lin Feng. Species, ironbark spirit tree, rank 5. Territory range 500 meters. Passive skill, spirit aura, level 2. Attracting local wildlife. The spirit aura was his music most potent tool. It acted like a beacon of pure, refined energy in a world of raw, chaotic nature. Within his 500-meter radius, the grass grew thicker and vibrantly green. Flowers that usually bloomed once a year now opened their petals every morning, basking in the invisible mist of Qin Fun exhaled. But this beacon also attracted predators. One evening, as the moon began its ascent over the jagged peaks of the Kanun foothills, a low whimpering reached Lin Feng's roots. He extended his consciousness, a sensation like invisible fingers brushing against the forest floor. At the edge of his clearing lay a wolf, but this was no ordinary beast. Music. It was a moon's wolf. Its fur matted with dried blood and its flank torn open by what looked like the claws of a much larger predator. Its breathing was shallow, and its silver eyes were clouded with the haze of approaching death. Lin Feng watched it. He could let it die and absorb its essence like he did with the boar. Music. It would be easy. But as he looked at the creature's defiant gaze, he felt a strange kinship. They were both outsiders in this brutal forest. I need eyes and ears beyond my music roots, Lin Feng mused. A tree, no matter how strong, is stationary. I need a guardian. He focused his intent. Instead of draining the life from the ground beneath the wolf, he did music the opposite. He pushed a concentrated stream of spirit chi through his roots and into the soil directly under the dying animal. The wolf flinched as the green light began to seep into its wounds. The effect was immediate. The jagged tear in its side began music to knit together, the fur regrowing in a shimmering ethereal silver. The wolf stood up shakily, letting out a confused howl. It looked at the massive obsidian tree, music sensing the intelligence behind the wood. It didn't flee. Instead, it walked toward the trunk and lowered its head in a gesture of absolute submission. Notice a bond has been formed. First guardian beast. Acquired Moon's Silver Wolf name assigned by Lan White Wave, Goodlefong thought. Now let's see what happens when I give you a music real gift. He turned his focus inward to his branches. For days he had been concentrating his essence into a single bud near his crown. Now he pushed music every spare unit of XP and QI into it. Processing, 500 essence units consumed. Fruit of Awakening, low tier, has reached maturity. A small pear-shaped fruit grew at music at impossible speed. It was translucent, glowing with a soft sapphire light that smelled of rain and ancient ozone. With a gentle snap, the fruit fell, landing softly in the moss before Bon. The wolf hesitated for only a second before devouring the fruit in a single bite. The transformation was violent. Bon's body arched, his bones cracking and reforming. He grew in size until he was as large as a grizzly bear. 2 small, bony protrusions emerged from his forehead, and his fur began to crackle with faint blue sparks of lightning. Evolution success, Guardian Bon. New species, Stormcore Silverwolf, Spirit Rank 2. Bannon let out a roar that shook the leaves of every tree in the valley. He was no longer a mere animal. He was a spirit beast bound to the tree that had given him a second life. Lin Feng felt a surge of power through the bond. As Bon grew stronger, so did he. It's time to expand, Lin Feng decided. He activated rapid growth and territory expansion simultaneously. It was a terrifying display of nature's power. His roots, now as thick as pythons, tore through the earth like living drills. They surged outward, claiming territory inch by inch, foot by foot. Underneath the forest floor, Linfeng was building an empire. He bypassed rocks, crushed the roots of lesser trees, and tapped into hidden underground springs. By the time the sun rose, his influence had stretched for 2 kilometers. He could feel every rabbit burrow, every prowling leopard, and every rustle of the wind within his domain. He was no longer just a tree in the forest. He was the forest. However, as his senses reached the furthest edge of his new territory, he felt something cold and alien metal, the scent of processed incense, the rhythmic thud of human footsteps. A group of people was approaching the valley, and they weren't alone. They carried weapons that hummed with a power similar to his own. Humans, Linfeng thought, his leaves bristling with a sudden sharp edge. The cultivators have arrived. The air in the valley had grown thick, not with humidity, but with the sheer weight of Linfeng's spiritual pressure. Within his 2-kilometer domain, the mist hung low and silver, acting as his nervous system. Every footstep that pressed upon the moss sent a vibration directly to his core. 3 figures emerged from the dense tree line. They wore flowing robes of sky-blue silk embroidered with silver clouds, the hallmark of the Blue Cloud sect. At the lead was Jiang Hao, a senior inner disciple with a face as sharp as the jade pendant hanging from his belt. Behind him followed 2 juniors, a nervous-looking boy named Xiao Chen and a cold-faced woman named Em Ling. They held their hands on the hilt of their flying swords, their eyes darting around the unnaturally vibrant forest. "Senior brother," Xiao Chen whispered, his voice trembling. "The chi here, it's denser than in the sex meditation chambers. Look at the grass. It's almost translucent." Dango stopped, his eyes narrowing as he looked toward the center of the valley where Linfeng stood. "This isn't a natural occurrence. There must be a heaven-grade treasure or a high-ranking spirit plant ahead. If we secure it for the sect, our promotion to the core circle is guaranteed." "Secure me?" Linfeng thought, his leaves rustling with a metallic chime. "You talk about me like I'm a piece of furniture." He watched through the eyes of Bon, who was prowling through the shadows, his silver fur crackling with blue electricity. The wolf was a coiled spring waiting for the command to kill. "Don't move," Linfeng commanded silently through their mental link. "Let them come closer. I want to see what cultivators can actually do." The trio reached the edge of the clearing. When they saw Linfeng, the massive obsidian bark tree with veins of pulsing silver, they gasped. But it wasn't the tree that held their attention. It was the fruit. High up in Linfeng's canopy, 3 more fruits of awakening had begun to ripen, glowing like tiny trapped suns. Spirit fruits. Mailing's cold mask broke, replaced by naked greed. And that tree, its wood is infused with iron essence. It would make a legendary staff. Jiang Hao stepped forward, drawing his sword. The blade hummed with a pale blue light. "Ming Xiao Chen, prepare the 7-star sealing array. We will uproot this tree and transport it back to the sect. If it resists, we'll harvest the heartwood and the fruits." Linfeng felt a cold spark of anger. In his past life, he had been stepped on by the powerful. Now, even as a tree, these immortals saw him as nothing more than a resource. "You want to uproot me?" Linfeng's roots began to churn beneath the soil. "I'll show you how deep my roots go." By land. Now, with a roar that sounded like a thunderclap, the Stormcore silver wolf exploded from the undergrowth. He was a blur of silver and lightning, his claws leaving scorched marks on the earth. "Beast!" Jiang Hao shouted, swinging his sword. A crescent of blue energy flew from the blade aimed at the wolf's throat. Bon didn't dodge. He opened his jaws and a ball of concentrated lightning collided with the sword arc, shattering it into harmless sparks. While the cultivators were distracted by the wolf, Linfeng struck. He didn't use his main roots. He used the entangling root skill he had perfected. Suddenly, the very ground beneath the 3 humans turned into a nest of vipers. Thick black vines burst upward, wrapping around their ankles and waists. An array? No, the tree is sentient. Ming screamed, slashing at the vines, but the bark was as hard as spirit iron. Her sword only left shallow nicks, skill activated, spirit aura crushing gravity. Linfeng didn't just want to catch them, he wanted to crush their arrogance. He intensified his aura, the spiritual energy in the clearing becoming as heavy as lead. The two juniors fell to their knees, gasping for air as the pressure threatened to snap their ribs. Zhang Hao, being at the foundation establishment stage, managed to stay upright, though his face was pale. He bit his finger and smeared blood across his sword. Secret art, blue cloud piercing the heavens. The sword grew 3 times its size, glowing with a blinding light. He aimed it straight at Linfeng's trunk, intending to split the tree in half. Too slow, Linfeng thought. Instead of blocking, Linfeng used rapid growth. A massive wall of iron hardwood sprouted from the ground in an instant, absorbing the impact of the giant sword. The shockwave shattered the surrounding smaller trees, but Linfeng didn't budge. Then he released a cloud of glowing green spores from his leaves. New skill unlocked. Parasitic spores level 1. As the cultivators inhaled, the spores entered their systems. Within seconds, they felt their own ki being drained away, fed back into the very tree they were trying to kill. "Stop, please!" Xiao-Chan wailed, his blue robes now tattered. "We surrender. We didn't know this was the domain of a great spirit." Linfeng paused. He could kill them easily, but dead cultivators would only bring an army of their masters. If he let them go, he could use them. He withdrew the roots but kept them pinned to the ground. He spoke not with a voice but by vibrating the air through his leaves to create a haunting multi-tonal sound that echoed in their minds. "Leave your weapons and your storage rings," the voice boomed. "Tell your sect that this valley belongs to the eternal tree. If you return with steel, you will leave as fertilizer." Terrified and drained of their power, the 3 cultivators scrambled to obey. They dropped their enchanted swords and silk pouches, bowed deeply toward the obsidian tree, and fled into the forest as if the devil himself were chasing them. Linfeng watched them go. He picked up the storage rings with a small flexible vine. Inside were spirit stones, manuals, and seeds. Valuable, he thought. But they'll be back, and when they do, I need to be much, much bigger. He looked at the XP he had gained from the brief skirmish. Level up. Current rank Ironbark Spirit Tree, rank 7. New evolution path available, World-Shielding Banyan or Blood-Sucking Ancient Willow. Linfeng didn't hesitate. The Blue Cloud sect wouldn't take their humiliation lightly. In the world of cultivators, saving face was often more important than life itself. They would return with elders, formation masters, and perhaps even their sect leader. He looked at the 2 evolution paths presented by the system. Path A, Blood-Sucking Ancient Willow, focuses on high-speed offensive strikes, life-leeching, and parasitic growth. Path B, World-Shielding Banyan, focuses on territory control, spatial defense, and the ability to host thousands of subordinate life forms. I am a tree, not a vampire, Linfeng thought. If I want to survive an army, I don't just need to kill, I need to control the battlefield. Evolution selected, World Shielding, Bone and rank 8. Commencing metamorphosis, integration of looted spirit stones detected. Linfeng felt his core ignite. The storage rings he had taken from the disciples burst open, the spirit stones inside dissolving into liquid light. His roots didn't just grow longer, they began to split from his massive branches. Secondary trunks, aerial roots dropped toward the earth like thick wooden stalactites. As these roots hit the ground, they took hold, growing into new trunks that remained connected to the central mother tree. Within hours, a single tree had become a small forest. New skill unlocked, Living Labyrinth passive. The layout of your territory shifts periodically. Non-allied entities will face a 50% decrease in sense of direction. New skill unlocked, Cheek Condensed Thorns active. Your leaves can be fired as hardened projectiles. Linfeng turned his attention to his subjects. By Lan, the Stormcore Wolf now had a pack of 6 lesser wolves who had been drawn to the valley's energy. Linfeng didn't leave them to chance. He produced 6 lesser spirit fruits feeding the pack. They didn't evolve as drastically as Bon, but their fur hardened into iron-like bristles, and their eyes glowed with a predatory intelligence. The humans will return. Linfeng's voice vibrated through the leaves, addressing the silver wolf. When they do not meet them in the open. Draw them deep into the labyrinth. Let the forest eat them. Bon bowed his massive head, a low growl of understanding vibrating in his chest. 3 days later, the horizon darkened. This was no scouting party. Leading the charge was Elder Mo, a man whose presence made the very air feel brittle. He stood on a massive floating gourd, his long white beard fluttering in the wind. Behind him were 20 elite disciples and 2 formation breakers, specialists trained to dismantle spiritual anomalies. There it is, Elder Mo muttered, his eyes cold as he looked at the sprawling obsidian-colored banyan grove, a sentient tree that dares to demand tribute from the Blue Cloud sect. Such arrogance must be uprooted. Elder, the chi signature is fluctuating, one of the specialists warned. It's as if the forest is breathing. It is a plant, not a god, Mo spat. All disciples enter the heavenly fire formation, burn the outskirts, and force the beast to show its heart. The disciples landed at the edge of the valley, their hands moving in synchronized mudras. Pillars of fire erupted from their palms, slamming into the perimeter of Linfang's domain. But the fire didn't spread. Instead of burning, the trees at the edge simply shifted. The flames were sucked into the silver veins of the bark, neutralized by the sheer volume of water-affected chili fun had pulled from the underground springs. My turn, Linfeng thought. The ground groaned. As the disciples stepped into the shade of the first banyan archway, the trees behind them moved. Trunks slid across the dirt as if on rails. In seconds, the 20 disciples were separated into 4 small groups, trapped in a maze of impenetrable obsidian wood. Stay together, Elder Mo shouted from his gourd. But a thick silver mist rose from the forest floor, obscuring his vision. Down in the maze, the slaughter began. Bon and his pack moved like ghosts. They didn't attack from the front. They used the shifting trunks to vanish and reappear, striking from the shadows. A disciple would hear a growl to his left only to be dragged into the darkness from his right. It's a trap. The trees are moving. Xiao Chan, the junior from before, who had been forced to return as a guide, screamed. A second later, a thick root burst from the ground like a spear, impaling him through the chest and pulling him into the earth to be recycled as nutrients. Elder Mo, seeing his disciples being picked off, roared in fury. He jumped from his gourd, his hand glowing with a terrifying dark purple light. Shattering palm of the void, he struck the nearest secondary trunk. The impact was like a cannon blast. The wood splintered, but instead of sap, a cloud of parasitic spores exploded in Mo's face. Cuff toxins, Mo sneered, holding his breath. He swept his arm, a gust of wind clearing the air. I will find your main body, demon tree, and turn your heart into my new cane. He began to fly toward the center of the grove, but the canopy above him suddenly closed. Thousands of jade-colored leaves turned toward him, shimmering with a metallic glint. Skill-activated, chi-condensed thorns. The forest roared. A hailstorm of razor-sharp leaves, each reinforced with rank 8 spirit key, rained down on the elder. He spun his sleeves, creating a defensive barrier, but the sheer volume of the attack was relentless. Ding, ding, ding. The leaves struck his barrier like bullets. Elder Mo was being forced lower and lower toward the ground, where the massive primary roots of Linfang were already waiting like coiled pythons. You are just a tree, Mo screamed, his barrier cracking. And you, Linfeng's voice boomed, vibrating through the very marrow of the elder's bones, are just fertilizer. A massive root as wide as a house surged upward. It didn't just hit Mo, it swallowed him, wrapping around him in a spiral of crushing force, absorbing Heil essence, XP plus 50,000, major breakthrough imminent. Linfang felt the elder's foundation-level chi flooding his system. It was like drinking liquid fire. His consciousness expanded. He wasn't just in the valley anymore. He could feel the tectonic plates moving. He could feel the thin veil between this world and the next. The remaining disciples fled in terror, but Linfang let them go. He needed messengers. He needed the world to know that the Forbidden Valley of the Eternal Tree was no longer a myth. It was a grave for the greedy. Warning, your rapid growth has caught the attention of the heavenly will, preparing for the tribulation of the void. The sky above the Forbidden Valley didn't turn gray. it turned a bruised, sickly purple. The heavenly will, the impartial laws of the universe, had recognized a glitch in the matrix. A single tree was growing too fast, consuming too much, and defying the natural order of mortality. The air crackled with the scent of ozone. Linfeng felt a pressure he had never experienced before. It wasn't the petty greed of cultivators. It was the weight of the heavens themselves trying to snuff out his spark. Alert, heavenly tribulation of the void detected, condition survival. Objective, absorb the lightning to trigger the final evolution, so the world itself wants me dead. Linfeng's leaves shimmered with a defiant obsidian light. I was killed by a machine in my last life. I won't be killed by a storm in this one. Banan and his pack whimpered, sensing the cosmic terror in the air. Get back, Linfeng commanded, his voice vibrating through the earth. Retreat to the deepest caves of the labyrinth. This is my battle. The first bolt of void lightning descended. It wasn't a jagged line of white, but a silent, terrifying pillar of black-purple energy that erased everything it touched. Boom. The strike hit Linfeng's crown directly. Half of his canopy was instantly vaporized. The pain was beyond anything he had ever known, a searing existential agony that threatened to shatter his soul, warning integrity at 40%. Emergency protocol redirecting chi to core. Is that all? Linfeng roared in his mind. He didn't just repair himself, he went on the offensive. He commanded his millions of roots to reach up from the soil, forming a massive spiraling spire of wood and spirit iron. He wasn't just standing there to be hit, he was building a lightning rod. The second and third bolt struck simultaneously. The valley was blinded by a flash of cosmic light. But this time, Linfeng was ready. Instead of resisting the energy he used, refining the void, a skill he had developed after consuming Elder Mo's essence, he drank the lightning. The black energy flowed through his silver veins, turning them into glowing channels of white-hot power. His bark didn't just regrow, it transformed into a crystalline substance that shimmered with the colors of a dying nebula. Condition met 100% void energy saturated. Beginning final evolution, world-shielding banyan to eternal primordial world tree. The ground beneath the valley groaned as Linfeng's roots finally broke through the crust of the planet. He felt the magma below and the vacuum above. His trunk expanded a hundredfold, pushing the mountains aside like they were pebbles. His canopy pierced the clouds, reaching into the upper atmosphere. Each leaf was now the size of a house, pulsing with a rhythm that matched the heartbeat of the world. As the final bolt of lightning, a massive world-ending spear of light, descended, Linfeng reached out with a branch that had turned into a hand of pure energy. He caught the lightning. He crushed it. The clouds broke. The purple light faded, replaced by a soft golden radiance that spilled from Linfeng's crown. Evolution complete. Rank transcendent, ranked 99. New domain, the sanctuary of the great tree. The valley was no longer a place of death. It had become a paradise. The spiritual energy was so dense it began to rain in liquid droplets of ki. Linfeng looked down. He saw Bilan, now a majestic creature of myth, standing at the base of his roots. He saw the animals of the forest, all of them evolving, growing stronger and more peaceful under his shadow. He could see the blue cloud sect in the distance, thousands of miles away, their leaders falling to their knees in terror as they looked at the massive tree that now dominated the horizon. Linfeng realized his purpose.